and welcome back to The Give and Go. I'm your co-host Reynoso, here with my boy
Soltero. What's up, guys?
The road to the 2026 World Cup has begun.
Excuse me?
The road to the 2026 FIFA World Cup here in the USA has already fucking begun, bro.
When I saw the schedule for it, I could not believe it, though. That's the thing.
Me too, man.
Because, dude, we're still just under 3 years away. There's so much time left. So it's crazy that we're already thinking about the road to the World Cup. But, hey, man, I'm here for it, especially when we get down to South America and these beautiful atmospheres.
Yeah, South America forcing us to prepare ourselves for the World Cup qualifiers. I mean, I was reading up, they advocated for this because they wanted to keep the same round-robin system that they've had in place since 1998 when it comes to the World Cup. They wanted to do it all over again. The only difference is this time around is that instead of 4 teams qualifying automatically, you have 6 teams. 6 teams in CONMEBOL qualifying out of 10 and 1 intercontinental playoff team. What's crazy, man, is something I just learned today upon reading and researching the Intercontinental Playoffs, man. A new playoff system that's being put in place where we will have 6 teams play in an intercontinental playoff system to decide the final 2 teams that get to qualify into the World Cup. Something that hasn't been done before because in the past it was just one-off games against another squad from maybe from the AFC region or from CONCACAF. But this time around, it'll be almost like a mini tournament that happens the year prior, I believe, in the USA to prepare or almost showcase the preparation for the upcoming World Cup.
Oh, so it's going to be in a neutral, or I guess neutral as in dress rehearsal in the United States.
Yeah, dress rehearsal, yes, is how it's being advertised. Yeah, really interesting.
Damn it. Okay, because I actually really enjoyed the previous editions of the Intercontinentals in the sense that it was still home and away. I always really enjoyed that because I did think that played a really big part. It was the final way that you could send your team off to the World Cup. Now they're gonna have to travel pretty big distances to do it. That actually, honestly,
well, they did that last World Cup,
and I didn't like it. I really didn't like it. So honestly, a little bummed by that. But obviously, at the end of the day, the right team will still qualify.
Yeah, and so we have a really interesting CONMEBOL landscape that awaits us. 10 teams, 6 of them vying for a World Cup qualification spot. I mean, here we fucking go, man. Like, it's here. Dude, it's right off the bat, dude.
Yeah, and can we actually talk about the format just very quickly? As you just mentioned, they hadn't changed it since 1998. They advocated to keep it the exact same. And this just gets really interesting, man, because now 60% of CONMEBOL has automatic spot to the World Cup, and a 7th team will still have a very good chance to join them. So only 3 teams, 3 teams in this entire qualification cycle will not participate. So it's almost like just kind of play average and you're in.
Yes.
It's pretty much all you're required to do in CONMEBOL. Now, obviously, that can still be tricky because, you go on these crazy road games and the atmospheres can be very daunting. You don't want to go on like a 3 or 4 game losing streak because then at that point, maybe you start finding yourself in the mud and it can be a little hard to get out of that. You don't want to find yourself in that situation, but honestly, if you can just avoid any sort of strings of losses, you're probably good. And it gets really interesting because now it actually kind of changes my viewing experience when it comes to this long haul that is the South American World Cup qualification. It's almost like a league. It's like the Prem. It really is. Like, at a certain point, these teams are kind of just battling each other for practice for the World Cup, not just qualification. That's what I get more so out of this with the expansion of the teams. Obviously, it was already kind of like that since 4 teams and then an extra 5th spot joined them. But now, with the extra added teams, it really is more so just a league where there's no real consequences if you finish in the middle or even closer to the bottom. It's pretty interesting, honestly.
Yeah, dude, I think a lot of people are undermining the new approach to CONMEBOL qualifying because, dude, a team like Argentina, they can play their B team the entire tournament and they'll be absolutely fine, dude.
That's crazy, but they could.
The conversation now is, the battle between 4th place and 7th place. That's what this becomes, rather than like, the top teams going at it, showcasing who's best in the region. That 3rd place was such a big conversation. Who gets 3rd and 4th place, and then you barely sneaking in at 5th place. It was so much more tighter. It was so much more. There was so much more meaning behind every single match. But now my interest is dropping a little because I just don't think these games mean as much, because it's a conversation about what 3 teams don't make it rather than what 4 teams manage to pull it off and get through by qualifying out of this region. I think overall it's going to make for a really interesting approach to CONMEBOL. Still, though, the matchups are going to be amazing. The scenes we're going to see are going to be incredible with these South American fans coming out. But it's just very weird trying to adapt to this new system, because so much of CONMEBOL was about how much each game meant and the pressure and the situations that these teams would find themselves in going away from home and, really needing these points. Now, if you're just pretty good, or if you're average in CONMEBOL, you're probably going to make it through, man, because when I look at the teams, when I rank these teams 1 to 10, I do think there's 2 pretty obvious picks for who's not going to qualify.
Dude, I have the exact same analysis. I actually looked at who's not going to make it, and that's it, because everyone else is in.
Yeah.
And I'm with you on these 2 picks, Venezuela and Bolivia.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Which one do you have in last?
Oh man, I'm gonna put Bolivia in last.
Yeah.
I'm not to say that they're gonna be absolute ass, but yeah, they're gonna finish last in this qualification.
They start off facing off against Brazil and Argentina.
No way.
They have to take
this month, right now.
This fixture, yes,
all right,
bro.
Perfect.
Yeah, dude, like they're done. Dude. They're taking such a massive hit right off the bat. Venezuela, I think, has a little bit more, but when I look at Bolivia's squad, man, it's just a team that right now hasn't even begun their transition period. They are stuck right now. There's not an influx of really exciting young talent that's there to lift them and kind of excite the fans into hoping that something more can happen. It's a pretty stale environment right now in Bolivia. And I do think, obviously, the impact of them hosting games in a very tough venue to visit in Bolivia will actually help them and be a blessing in this situation. But overall, at the end of the day, a team like Bolivia, I do not see thriving in this situation, and I have them finishing in 10th place in CONMEBOL.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And then right above them, I have Venezuela,
Same.
but for similar reasons. I think both Venezuela and Bolivia, well, they do have decent talent, and they have players that do compete at a high level within CONMEBOL, competing in the Sudamericana and Copa Libertadores. Yeah. But I just think when you look at the talent that they have to face, it gets really, really tough for them. And again, it's not to say that Venezuela and Bolivia don't have talented players. It's just that their opposition is so much better than them on average. So yeah, I just find it very, very difficult to see any sort of permutation where Venezuela or Bolivia get through.
Tough, man. Tough. So for me, the exciting part of this region is, like I said, that 4th to 7th place spot in the table. Who ends up getting that? I'm going to say the teams that I think are going to be vying for those spots, and I want to know if you agree with me or if there's a team that I'm missing.
Sure.
For me, it comes down to Paraguay, Chile, and Peru. Which team ends up in 7th going to the Intercontinental Playoffs, and which 2 teams from these 3 end up going through automatically?
Yeah, and which team gets the 8th spot and doesn't go through?
Yes,
right.
My fault. Yeah, absolutely.
And I have the exact same 3 teams.
Good.
Chile, Paraguay, and Peru, I think, will fight to not get that last 8th spot and not qualify and try and at least get the 7th spot. I think it will be between those 3 teams. And it's mainly because I think they're all in pretty similar situations. Peru and Chile more so, right? And I'll start with those.
I agree.
Yeah. These 2 teams need a transition, right? They had, Chile specifically, had a golden generation that finally died out in this last qualification cycle. Buried. So now it's time for them to rebirth. And when you look at their squad selections under Berizzo, the Argentine, it's a mixture of a little bit of that old guard still, to be honest. I know Sanchez got called up, Gary Madel, for example. And I think those are good characters that still have in the squad. But most of the other players are pretty new, and they kind of need to be. Arangui's obviously one of the other veterans that's still getting called up. But Chile really needs to really think about the next, not even just 3-4 years. I'm talking 5, 6, 7 years, because whereas they were so good for the last 10 years, what has been left for them, not good. Mm-hmm. So now they really need to think about letting go of that old guard and now moving forward with an entirely new generation. And I can pretty much say the exact same thing, just to a lesser degree, about Peru.
Even under Reynoso, bro?
The fellow Peruvian ex-Puebla coach.
Yeah, man. Even under a Reynoso, man. You don't think a Reynoso can lead them past the qualification cycle, bro?
Juan Reynoso, man, I like his coaching style 100%. It's pretty offensive, which I think goes very well with Peru. But I just think it's pretty tough to replicate the heights that Peru reached between like 2015 and 2018.
Gareca.
Yeah.
Gareca, man.
Yeah, man. I'll just go and say the greatest Peruvian coach of all time.
Yeah, I think you're good.
Come on.
I think you're good on that one. Yeah.
That it's so hard to replicate something like that. And very similar to Chile, they still have some old guard being called up. Paolo Guerrero, el capitán. Still getting called up right now at 39 years of age, which is really interesting. I know he's doing good things in Ecuador.
Yes, sir.
And there's other examples of that too, but they too have to look to the future with a new generation. And similar to Chile, I just don't see it being as strong. But that's all they have, right? So they have to focus on it and try to find a winning formula with what is at their disposal.
Yeah, man. When it comes to Chile, this one really disappoints me because I was looking at the lista de convocados, the people that were called up. And I was hoping that a guy like Diego Valdez was like 22 years old. 29 years old,
Yeah, he's at
man.
the end of his prime.
Damn, dude. Like, there's very little optimism within this nation that would make me or lead me to believe that they will be able to make it and qualify out of this region. It concerns me, bro, because relying on these old aging stars right now with really little to no influx of young talent, it might be enough. It might be enough given that they have 7 out of 10 spots available for the World Cup. It might be enough. But I get very, very concerned. And when I ask the question, what team concerns me the most in CONMEBOL going into this cycle, I do think it's Chile, man. Yeah. I think it's Chile more than Peru because I think an aspect of Peru that has always stood out to me is their fight. I think that South American heart is very well represented within Peru. They always find a way, despite the talent that they have, to just play with a different type of force that other teams don't tend to have when they're going in through like down stages like how Peru is going through right now. There's a pride. There's an energy in the team that even if you don't have the best players, you'll still go out there and try your absolute fucking best to try to compete in a match. Will they end up getting positive results? Probably not. But maybe, just maybe, they can do just enough to be able to stay in contention of qualifying out of this region. So for me, I actually have Peru just one spot above Chile. But I do think Chile ends up being the team that I'm most worried about going into this cycle.
That's what's so interesting about this new format's dynamic is that while I do agree with your concerns about Chile, honestly, spot on. I don't see much promising prospect when it comes to this Chilean squad. And yes, even Peru, even though maybe they do have a little bit more fight. But here's what's really interesting. They have to only aim for mid-table, and they're in automatically. And that's what I was kind of trying to say at the beginning is that I think not only as fans can we approach our viewing experience differently, the players, the coaches, and these national teams can approach this qualification cycle completely differently. Because honestly, if I was in charge of the Chilean or Peruvian national teams, I would have a much bigger focus on cohesion and chemistry rather than results. Because in all the past qualification cycles, man, I'd be stressed out if I didn't have 3 points after like 2 games. I would be stressed out. But now you can actually lose more and qualify automatically than you could in the past.
Yeah, it's about getting victories against Venezuela and Bolivia. You can't lose those games.
Can't lose those.
But then when you face like Argentina and Brazil, it's just like, boys, don't let more than 2 goals in now.
Yeah.
You know, keep that goal difference down.
Right.
Outside of that, I'm open to losing.
Exactly. And I'm open to actually kind of And I'm open to playing a better game within ourselves and just improving on what we have. And then from there, we build our chemistry. We build up that little give and go, the passing, whatever we can build on. That's what I would focus on because, if I'm in charge of Paraguay, for example, I know we don't have the talent, at least in comparison to Uruguay, Brazil, Argentina, Ecuador, for example. But what I do know is that we have more margin to lose.
Yeah.
So that means we don't have to focus on winning so much. And I actually think it could help these struggling teams like Peru, Chile, and Paraguay.
So then who do you have in that 7th or 8th spot?
Yeah.
Is it Chile or is it Peru?
This is really, really tough, man.
I'm going Chile on this one, brother.
You're going Chile?
I think I'm going to go Chile, yeah.
I'm not going to count out Chile. I don't think I can. I want to put Paraguay in there. But Yeah. But I want to put Paraguay in there. But at the same time, I wish I could see a couple games.
Yeah. And you can.
And I can't. So let's revisit this for sure.
We will.
But right now, I'm actually going to go Peru.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to go Peru only because I just don't know if they have any offensive components really anymore. That's my biggest worry about Peru. Whereas, I feel like Chile and Paraguay, if they can use their physicality, I think they can beat a team like Peru when it really matters. That's my only reasoning right now. But after 4 or 5 games of watching the qualification cycle, I'm sure it'll change.
Yeah, Peru. Yeah, I mean, Paraguay still has a guy like Miguel Almiron who can maybe do something surprising. Julio Enciso isn't playing this qualifying cycle because out with injury, but over 3 whole years, I could actually see him be a prominent part of that offensive line.
Yeah.
And for Chile, you still have Alexis Sanchez, who had a great year at Marseille last year.
Did.
Could very well provide some offensive force. For Peru, I agree. There really isn't much now outside of Paulo Guerrero, who's an aging man, dude.
That's the problem. And even when Chile, the reason why I back them over Peru is honestly just because of their physicality and their numbers at the back. A player like Guillermo Maripan, for example, I think he can come in clutch for this team. Guillermo Soto, the fullback who plays in Russia, also very talented as well. So I just see slightly better prospects for Chile over Peru. So yeah, I actually have Peru not automatically qualifying or not qualifying at all.
I do, for me though, I do see a distinction between Chile, Peru, and then Paraguay. I think there's just slightly more excitement with this Paraguayan team. You got Richard Sanchez in the midfield controlling the game. Always such a reliable DM for this squad and for America as well. Exciting talents in Almiron, as well as the fullbacks. Rojas, who's always been really good. I think he used to play for River Plate at one point. There's good talent on Paraguay. Not enough to infiltrate the top 5 in my opinion, but I think to be a positive mid-table team, 6th or 7th place, that's where I have them at right now. If you're Paraguayan, I mean, you're looking forward to that, man, because the timing could not have been better. They were not very good last qualifying cycle, and that's my biggest concern is if that continues, if that trend just doesn't stop. And I'm hoping they can find a new breath of fresh air under Barros Esquiloto. And I do think they'll end up doing better this time around than what they did last qualifying cycle. But if anything, I think Paraguay will end up benefiting the most from this new format, because a team that they represent a team that wouldn't have made it through if they continue that same format, but with the new 17-16 format that they have now, they're going to get in, bro, and they're going to be at the World Cup here in the USA.
Yes, and my biggest thing for Paraguay is they need an entire mindset shift. You just laid out the talent that they do have, and it is pretty solid. It's good, definitely good enough to qualify in this format. But dude, they have been so poor for, I'd say, the last 5 years. And I mean poor, man. Yeah. So much so that they're, yes, they compete, bro, but you're not going to have a bad time against Paraguay. And that sucks. That sucks if you're Paraguayan, knowing what they've done, honestly, in the recent past, even just, add 10 years to that timeline. And Paraguay were doing well in Copa America, making World Cups in 2010. So what the Paraguayan team has now and the results that they've been giving their country has been so bad. So maybe Barros Esquiloto can unlock something a little bit different that past coaches haven't been able to, man. But that's my only problem with Paraguay, is that they have a little bit of demons that they're going to have to honestly crush. But hopefully they can do it, man. Again, like you said, Enciso, Almiron playing at a very high level, that has to mean something. But I think their chemistry just needs to raise tenfold.
Yes. Okay, so then that leaves us with 5 South American teams, and I'm going to rank them by the tiers that I set for them. I want to know if you agree with me. I see Argentina and Brazil in one tier. I then see Uruguay in its very own category. Following that, I see Colombia and Ecuador in the third tier. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I can entertain that.
Okay. So when it comes to Colombia and Ecuador, this one I'm interested in. Where do you stand in your viewing of both these teams? Keep in mind, Ecuador is going into the qualifying cycle already down 3 points.
No, they have negative 3 points, bro. Pretty, honestly, bizarre to see on the table, but it makes sense. They falsified papers by Don Castillo.
Can't be doing that shit.
Can't be doing that shit. So I think 3 points, honestly, not that bad. Like if you're Ecuadorian,
You think so?
Yeah, if you're Ecuadorian, it could have been like
annoying.
6.
Yeah.
Could have been 8 or 9. 3, not that bad.
Yeah.
So, but when it comes to Ecuador, Colombia, I'm gonna give Ecuador the edge off of their performances that they gave in the 2022 FIFA World Cup. Honestly, what I think held them back in that tournament wasn't their personnel; it was the coach, Gustavo Alfaro. Went so defensive in that game against Senegal, changing the formation, and I just completely disagree with it, considering how offensive they were in the first 2 matches, and they won both of them. Or actually, sorry, and they got good results out of both of them, or at least played really, really good football, right? The Netherlands one was just a little unlucky. But I think Alfaro was the limiting factor. And now they have, I think, a little bit more of a progressive coach in Felix Sanchez, ex-Qatari boss. And I think hopefully he can fully realize the talent that Ecuador has, man. Because I think when you look at the talent Ecuador-Colombia, it's, I think, a lot closer than people think. And so much so, I think Ecuador might even have the more promising type of talents, in my opinion. And I think for those reasons, I actually give Ecuador the slight edge over Colombia. But, you know, it gets finicky. If Felix Sanchez isn't the coach, Ecuador have proven to be very inconsistent when things aren't working out. But I'm still going to give it to the talent that Ecuador have to actually be a slightly better team.
Okay. I think the only reason I can't buy stock in Ecuador this time around, because I'm hearing a lot of people, you know, really hype up this Ecuadorian team. And although they are very good in the midfield and defensively, my biggest concern with Ecuador is, where do they get their goals, bro? Where? You have an aging Ener Valencia who probably won't be playing for them by the time the World Cup comes. He's doing very well right now for Internacional, but 3 years from now, will he be doing the same thing? I'm not going to rely on that. Outside of him, I mean, who else do you have offensively?
My only counter to that is Colombia themselves. They proved that they, even with the offensive talents that they had last cycle, that they couldn't find the back of the net either. And so I think what actually meant more was the cohesion and the fluidity that Ecuador showed over their Colombian counterparts. That's why I still have Ecuador playing at a little higher level than Colombia. Even if they might not have these same offensive pieces, I think the way that they move the ball means a lot more and is way more dynamic than the way Colombia do it right now.
Yeah, it makes sense. Bro, Colombia doesn't have midfield. Like, at least Ecuador has a really good, solid midfield and defense to at least rely on to get a tie or maybe keep it, low scoring. Colombia, I remember that was a big part about their conversation, was their inability to score goals in like 7 straight matches. For a big part of it, Luis Diaz was injured. I remember he was out for a major part of the important part of the qualifying cycle. But you still have Sinistera up there. James Rodriguez at Sao Paulo right now. Maybe he can do something for the Colombian team. He changes every time he puts on that jersey. I think there's a little bit more offensive impetus for Colombia, but ultimately, I think both of these teams are incredibly, incredibly close. And if this was a traditional World Cup qualifying format, this would be the conversation, is which of these two teams comes through. But because it's 6, 7 teams now, it's no question. I think both of them are going to go through. Yeah. And ultimately, I have Colombia over Ecuador only because of that -3 differential that they're starting off with.
Okay, that's really fair. And the reason why I'm not concerned about, let's say, Ecuador's lack of offensive pieces is because, dude, when I look at all of the opponents that are underneath them, not including the tiers above them, I mean, they don't have much else either, bro. They really don't. Chile don't have much of offensive line. It's aging. Peru is the exact same. Paraguay, while they do have Enciso and Almiron, it hasn't proven anything, not at the national level yet. And so that's what we're waiting to see from Paraguay, is to see that potential unlocked. And then, Venezuela and Bolivia. So compare those offensive pieces to Ecuador and Colombia. I think Ecuador and Colombia are way better off, bro.
But isn't that kind of disappointing, bro? Because the same excitement and almost pressure you put on CONCACAF teams because they are hosting a World Cup here in North America in their home region. South America, outside of the top dogs, right, doesn't have much to show when it comes to them having a World Cup here in the Americas, bro. A much bigger opportunity than what was presented in 2022 in Qatar. You would hope that South America would have something of, or at least put some sort of pressure on them to be able to provide some really solid teams, because this is a golden opportunity, man. There's a lot of Latin Americans and South Americans here in the States that will be pulling up to these games, bro. For any matchup between a South American team and a European team, we're going to see more South Americans. But we're talking about every team basically outside of Argentina, Brazil, and Uruguay being somewhat underwhelming, man. I'm a little sad, bro. I'm a little disappointed.
I mean, if you really want to get into it, it's just down to infrastructure and football economies in any country not named Brazil or Argentina in South America. It really is just down to that. The money's not really there in, for example, the Chilean, Peruvian, even Colombian league is not that great. So what really just drives football there is just pure culture. Whereas Argentina, and especially Brazil, they get culture and also a little bit of economy and also just structure support.
Yeah.
But I just think that's one reason, in a sea of millions of reasons why CONMEBOL is maybe not doing as well as I think a lot of people want them to. But the football and culture still within that entire continent is enough to make any team in South America still one of the best national teams in the world.
That's why, man, I've always I get so conflicted with South America, because it's just not common to have such a big gap between the best teams and then the teams that follow that, man. It's Brazil, Argentina always, and then Uruguay if they want to get involved. And then after that, man, it's just such a massive dip, in my opinion, especially this time around, bro. We saw it last qualifying cycle with how Brazil and Argentina didn't lose a single game, dude.
Crazy.
That's concerning, man.
Yeah.
Share a little bit of that success, Argentina and Brazil, please, because it's becoming too easy for both of those squads to dominate the region. I want to see more from South America outside of those top two teams. That's ultimately what my whole point and I guess motivation in this argument is. I just want them to be better, because they've been so notoriously known for developing such great talent, and we see it in Europe. But when it comes to developing a cohesive team at the international stage, it's been disappointing, bro, ever since the 2014 World Cup. Which leads me to a very interesting question, man. You're a stockbroker, all right? You decide what you want to invest yourself in on a daily basis. A stock abbreviated URG pops up on your system, and you think to yourself, do I buy stock into this Uruguayan team? They're led now by Marco Bielsa Ball, Luis Suarez, and Edison Cavani no longer called up to the team.
Right.
Young talents in Darwin Núñez, Federico Valverde, a guy like Manuel Ugarte, Nicolás de la Cruz, Chema Jimenez. There's some names on this team.
Oh, yeah.
Ultimately, though, given how they performed at the 2022 FIFA World Cup, which we thought was very disappointing, are you buying stock in Uruguay?
I think you kind of have to, because of those names that represent themselves as Darwin Núñez and Federico Valverde. Those are absolute standouts, especially when you compare them to any other non-Argentine or Brazilian CONMEBOL team. And I think that alone can, really push you up into that upper echelon of CONMEBOL, right underneath Brazil and Argentina. I think Uruguay, despite not having the legends of Cavani and Luis Suarez, still play a very, very good game. And I'll just be very curious to see what Marcelo Bielsa does, man.
It's a lot of goals to make up for, man.
Yeah.
Between Cavani and Suarez, can Núñez carry that load, man?
But that's the thing, is that you asked me the same question 10 years ago, I would say no. But the current state of CONMEBOL, I'm going to say absolutely.
Oh, here, yeah.
That's the crazy thing.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Maybe I'm thinking more long term, like, can they get past the group stage
once they get to the World Cup
and actually do something important? Because I thought they were so abysmal ultimately at the end of the day with what they had to play with and what they ultimately ended up doing, dude. Uruguay was a disappointment, and I want them to be able to do something of prominence at this upcoming World Cup. I think that's what more than I mean, because CONMEBOL, obviously they've got that in the bag.
Oh, absolutely. But that's also what gets really frustrating about this whole CONMEBOL World Cup qualification cycle is that, yes, Uruguay can go on a really good run, but it can be very hard to really understand how good they are playing. That was my entire take last qualification cycle and why I thought CONMEBOL had been on a very major decline and why they were no longer as competitive as they once were. It's because of that. Yes, you can look good within the continent themselves. As you just said, Brazil and Argentina going not winless, Jesus. Brazil and Argentina going unbeaten. And Uruguay can honestly do something very, very similar. Not unbeaten, but they can go on a really good run of just winning or getting a lot of draws. But really, will it really mean anything if Chile can't find themselves, if Colombia go on another weird drought, if Peru cannot even manage to be what they were in 2018, if Paraguay can't unlock Miguel Almirón and Julian Enciso, then yeah, of course Uruguay's going to go on a really good run, and it's going to look amazing. So it gets really tricky when we try to analyze a lot of these CONMEBOL teams, and it's the trickiness and the difficulty that I managed to see a couple years ago, right before 2022.
Yeah, man, it's tough to learn anything, though, with this new format, man. 6 teams going through. Like, what can I take away truly from a team that gets through in third place? Like, yes, they're good, but if I'm predicting it now and Uruguay ends up being there, what ultimately is my takeaway, man? It's tough because obviously Argentina and Brazil are going to dominate the region, but Uruguay has always been that third or fourth place team in this region. What else more is there to learn and to expect? I think it's just a matter of seeing the football that they play. If it's an organic, if it's a healthy style of football that Bielsa can implement, then you can take something away. But if they're just kind of getting by and just beating the teams that they are obviously better than, there's just not much to learn. That's what ultimately is the most interesting thing about this team is the way and style that they play and why I'm so intrigued to see what Marco Bielsa can do at the international level.
Oh yeah, it's going to be really, really intriguing. And for Uruguay, it's exactly that. For them, I think their expectations has to be dominate. You have the talent, especially over most of CONMEBOL, so use it. Go off. Because if you're just getting by winning 1-0, 2-1, and it's not really fully deserved, then yeah, you'll qualify easily, no problem, but you're going to struggle at the World Cup, just as we saw last December. So for Uruguay, I think the expectation needs to be dominate the matches. You should dominate. And then when you play against Argentina and Brazil, go toe-to-toe. Every time.
Is there a chance they could end up in second or first in this group?
I don't see it. I don't see it at all. I only see.
What if they do? Would that mean something?
It would mean everything. It would mean everything. For Uruguay to crack that top 2, or honestly, even get within like a game at the end of it all. Yeah. If they're within 3-4 points, I'd actually be very impressed.
That's a lot.
So I think that's how you honestly have to analyze this whole qualification cycle. You got to go off to pure eye test. Results can't mean that much.
No. All right, here's the funnest question of them all. Who tops the table?
I'm going Argentina.
Dude, I kind of want to go Argentina too,
I'm going Argentina, man.
I have... They're the best in the world right now.
I think they're really, really good.
My only qualm or concern is Brazil is notoriously known for dominating CONMEBOL standings, dude.
Yeah.
Like, this is what they do best. Maybe not even performing at the World Cup at this point.
Right.
It's when it comes to this region and performing in the World Cup qualifiers, Brazil shows out, man. Whereas Argentina just does what they have to do. They get the job done and they get through in second place or in first.
Yeah, dazzle here and there.
This time, though, I get so curious because of everything in the build-up to this qualifying cycle, everything we've seen. Argentina winning the goddamn World Cup, besting Brazil in that process in the sense of just proving that there's more to be had in that country, proving to be the better team, the more formidable team in clutch situations. Argentina is the best team in the world right now. Why would I not pick them to be first in this group, man? And I think that's why I ultimately end up going with them winning it because, I mean, bro, we got studs. Studs on this team. And I think I have less questions and less concerns with Argentina because there's a fluidity, there's a chemistry that they have right now that even though Brazil has quality players all around, I don't think they've achieved the same level of chemistry despite that star status that they've had. Argentina, they can just insert players here and there and they still play the same exact way. I like that way more. And I am definitely going to rely on that much more than a Brazilian team that just has a bunch of stars right now.
When you look at Argentina's midfield and offensive line, really the only question I would ask of Argentina over the next 3 years is how are you ultimately going to place Di Maria? right? He still gets the call-up, but there's going to be a certain point where he just can't answer it anymore, right?
Yeah.
He's getting way up there in age. The way that he plays really does rely on some form of pace, right? Even to this day.
Go get a flat tire, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's always that chance, especially the older that he gets. So that's my only question for Argentina. Like, they've managed to completely reinforce their midfield over the last 2 years with really young talent. And you still have a player like Lautaro Martinez, Julian Alvarez to spearhead your offense. And then Messi, he could play till he's 45 and still completely dominate on the pitch. So his position is golden as long as he wants to play. So Argentina is set, completely set. They're the best team in the world right now.
Yeah, I think my question is, who do they end up finding to pair alongside Guti Romero? Romero's been playing great. He's got 2 goals in 4 games for Tottenham right now. I think he's going to be great. He's set to be the starting center back for Argentina in 2026. But in the past, it was Otamendi. But I think age might get to him as well in the same way that Di Maria.
Right.
Who do they end up finding to kind of fulfill that spot? Because it's always been a very prominent role for Argentina is the center back position. Are they going to essentially get a downgrade in that spot? Or will they be able to find someone that can match up to Otamendi's status that he had with the team?
I think you could find a player that matches up. And even if it is a downgrade, I think it would be very, very minimal. Lisandro Martinez, for as much maybe criticism that he might get, he's an incredible one-on-one defender. And he's very good in the box with space. So I think Martinez could be an easy fix. And then if any other center back comes up that ends up shining over him, well, then there you go. You get an upgrade in a position you didn't really need a major one in the first place. So, yes, I do think they'll have to figure out Otamendi, but I don't think it'll be detrimental to do so.
Yeah. All right, so we both have Argentina topping it. Brazil? What do you just stand on Brazil and their overall outlook going into the 2026 World Cup? I mean, they had a tumultuous defeat against Croatia in penalties in a game that was just so dramatic, so crazy. Neymar goes out, but now... I mean, Neymar's happy in Saudi Arabia collecting those bags. Hopefully he can be healthy for the coming years. But Brazil is another team that I think is on that radar, despite of the way that 2022 ended as a World Cup contender. Ultimately, with the talent that they have at hand, yes, maybe Argentina is better than them right now, but in the next 3 or 4 years, we could see Brazil find a new form, find a new wave of momentum to get behind to lead them to their first World Cup title in over 25 years.
Yeah, Brazil have to consider themselves as World Cup contenders in 2026. Their squad talent is just way, way too good. Anything other than a top 2 finish in CONMEBOL qualification will be an absolute disaster when you look at just pound for pound skill that they have versus all of their opponents. Brazil have to consider themselves as still one of the best on the continent, rivaling that of Argentina, and I think they will. I think they're going to go toe-to-toe, go maybe unbeaten once again. Brazil have that type of talent. What gets me, though, bro, yes, one thing, Neymar. Like that, I think when Neymar is flying, Brazil's at their best. I really do think so. Is that motivation going to be there? Is his age going to get to him? I don't know. Those are all just completely speculative questions, and we'll see that as these CONMEBOL qualifications progress. But my other question is, dude, what is Brazil doing with the coaching situation, man?
Yeah.
A full year with a caretaker manager, and then apparently Ancelotti's going to come in?
Apparently, that's what he said, man.
Right, but that's weird, bro. That's an entire year where Fernando Diniz, the ex-Fluminense coach, I've heard really good things about actually the way that he plays football. So I think they're in good hands. But like, why? Why do this,
team
Brazil?
Of that stature
That's what I'm
doing
saying.
That, man?
Yeah, like this is what the USA does, bro. A year of caretaker. You know what I mean? This is really strange that Brazil is going this route. I guess they're banking on the gold at the end of the road with Ancelotti, but is that what they want to do? I guess so, because that's literally what they're doing.
Dude, international football is so different from club too.
Yeah.
Who's to say that Ancelotti can just translate all his club football knowledge straight to the international level? It's a different game completely. And given that these guys speak a completely different language as well, I don't know if I feel as secure about the Ancelotti signing. I think it's solid. It's good that they look somewhere else outside of a Brazilian that might be, a little past it, honestly. But I have this whole take about Brazil right now, man, because if you remember last season, Give and Go last season, dude, I picked Brazil to win the World Cup.
Yeah, it was a good pick.
I invested my emotions, my hopes into that team, pulling off the incredible and winning their first World Cup trophy in 20 years. By the time 2026 comes up, it'll have been 24 years since Brazil, bro. Brazil, a team that just saw their rivals, Argentina, lift the trophy right in front of them to disappoint once again on the World Cup stage. I'm fed up, dude. Like, I'm fed up. And I was already feeling this way leading up to the last World Cup. I can't imagine how Brazilians must be feeling now. Like, that prominence, that dominance that they had for so long, winning 5 World Cups in their history. Like, it's time. It's time that you revamp that image of yourself. It's time that you remind people of what you're capable of at the biggest stage. And for me, this point out, this is how I'm looking at Brazil. No more excuses. No more, bro. Because maybe it'd be a question of talent if they didn't have it. Maybe a question about coaching, but now you have Ancelotti coming in. Maybe a question of just the financial, the structure, the infrastructure in Brazil. But no, they have the best league in the Americas right now. Brazil hasn't made out for them to win the World Cup if they want it. For the next 3 years, bro, on this podcast, when it comes to talking about Brazil, bro, I'm going to talk about them like as if they're a son that I expect more out of.
Yeah, you're going to be harsh on them.
I'm going to be a little harsh on them because
I
I want them to succeed. I want them to be great again. And I just can't take it. I can't take it, bro, if they go another World Cup cycle disappointing ultimately by flaming out in the quarterfinal stage or semifinal stage of the World Cup. I want a finals appearance minimum from this team because they have the talent to do it. And I want to see Brazil back on top, bro. Sorry I got a little fed up there. I'm sorry I got a little emotional. All right? I want to...
There's so much... Dude, there's so many games to be played in South America. That's what makes it really fun. Like, what if Chile actually just go off? Ecuador can't find the form that they somehow had under Alfaro. Peru use a 42-year-old Pablo Guerrero. I don't know, man. Like,
dude, the way football works, one of these teams that we've downplayed is probably going to end up playing really well.
100%.
Like, that's just how it goes, man.
Yeah. Especially since there's room for 7 teams. There's a lot of variation that could happen right around that 7th spot. So, dude, I can't wait till we're like 9 games in. 9, like
the stakes are high,
and the stakes are a lot higher, and teams know what needs to be done. That is my favorite part about CONMEBOL is once we're right at that halfway point, because you can almost map out what every team needs to do to actually qualify. It'll get a little easier here since more teams get in, but it always gets so fun during that point.